Matt asked me what was the most heart-wrenching, difficult story to report in my checkered career. I think there are a lot of stories that fit that category. I guess one that comes to mind here that maybe old-time Clevelanders would remember. What was the young girl's name? She was a newspaper. No. Tiffany Papish. She was a newspaper girl for the Plain Dealer, and disappeared and was murdered. And there is somebody in prison, and I think on death row for the crime, who there's some doubt about whether it's the right guy. But I remember with another reporter from Channel 5 who, what's his name? Jay Backus, I think. So this was like, maybe 25, 28 years ago. But I remember, okay, they found a body in a house. And everybody suspected by the location it was probably her. And trying to be respectful, let like 5 or 6 hours pass, assuming the police would have notified her mother about this possibility or probability. And then I remember, well, the Grim Reaper's ritual here of pounding on the door. I remember Jay and I were both there. When the mother came to the door, it was obvious she had no clue why we were there. So, I mean, in terms of just, and how did we get out of that? I think I think we just did not do an interview where we backed off and said we were here, it was a mistake. So, all right, but anyway, if you're asking things, profound impact. I mean, I've covered, tornado victims. I've done stories. One of the awards I got was for a story back in Dayton about a alleged charity that was supposed to be benefiting crippled kids. It wasn't. I mean, it's easy to be a cynic in this business. On the one hand, you see the best of humanity, but on the other hand, you get to see the worst of humanity. So.
Thank you, Nate. Anybody else have a question? And we're gonna.
I want to go home and see the Cavs too.
Gonna pass the microphone because this is being podcast.
What do you think was the cause of the media's ignoring the corruption in Cuyahoga County for so many years until the federal government stood in, since most of the people in the business community were aware of it at some level?
Well, it's a combination of, like I said, I think we maybe not at the same time, the business community, but the media collectively. I mean, you were hearing rumblings about a big investigation. And you can't, but the problem being that stuff like this, you can't just go on the air with rumors or speculation. You have to have somebody in a position of authority, give you, ironclad confirmation. And so since the federal government knows how to button up its prosecutors and, FBI agents, preceding that, I think there was, we're all guilty of being maybe a little bit oblivious. But again, the sort of stuff didn't happen in a public meeting. And unless you happen to know one of the people involved in the equation, it'd be pretty hard to know where to stick the shovel. So I'm not defending, I'm just explaining. I mean, I feel like somehow I was asleep at the switch, but I think collectively the community has been kind of astounded and shocked. So if you knew about it earlier, you should have called me.
Great question. Anybody else have a question? Okay.
When a political figure or anyone is speaking to a reporter and they say something and they say, this is off the record, do you always respect that?
I do, but you better define terms because different reporters, I think, have different definitions of off the record. There are some reporters who think that, off the record is somehow just not attributable to me. There are some reporters, myself, who, I always try to clarify it. I mean, can I use the information anyway? No? Okay. Then I'll abide by, the terms and conditions you impose on it. But I mean, again, there is sort of a spectrum of squishy definitions of off the record, I mean, I'm pretty much of an absolutist. Off the record is off the record. But I mean, you define your own terms. I mean, you see a lot of stories today in the news now where the story is sourced to a person who didn't want to be identified because they weren't authorized to comment about it. I mean, this is just kind of a trend in journalism that's developed the last couple of years. So just make sure that you're reading off the same page with the reporter you're talking to. I mean, have you had occasions where people published or broadcast something that you didn't want out there, or?
So it's wise not even to say that off the record. Don't say anything.
Well, no. I mean, if you're in your mind, I mean, if you want to put some conditions upon the information, it's you establish the conditions. You're in control of the interview. You're in control of the information. You decide under what terms and conditions it can be used.
Mr. Barris, this question is really probably more for the print journalists than for you, but it may have application to your situation too. Once an interview has been given, the tradition is for you to go back to the studio or the journalist to go back to a desk and write it up, and never to call the source back to check anything. And I think the ethos is you don't want to give someone a chance to retract something or reshape it or revise.
So, I mean, are you suggesting the subject of the story be given editing rights over it, or?
No, that's exactly what somebody should not have, is editing rights.
Right.
But in the process of throwing out editing rights, seems to be you also lose an opportunity to continue to have dialogue about something and to check some facts.
Well, I mean,
continue.
again, I'm not trying to
So
put
just
myself...
if you would comment, I'd be interested.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put myself up on any kind of a pedestal, because heaven knows that's not appropriate. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, if I interview somebody and I get back to the station and I interview something and there's something that either is inconsistent or doesn't make sense, or a point that just flew by me, I mean, I will call back to try and refine or clarify. I mean, it's pointless to put something that's either wrong or confusing on the air. So, again, I mean, I think, the longer I've dealt with certain people, the more comfortable I am doing something like that. Yes, sir.
My question is this, and this has always bothered me. When I see a reporter doing an interview, and say, for instance, this person is in their car, they literally will pull the door open or almost go into the car or even in your house. I would think that there is some ethics violation for a person to do that, but yet they are requesting a story of you, and even if you wanted to give a story,
well, it depends on
the
the
aggressiveness of it.
Again, I think I know what you're talking about here, but it depends on the circumstances. Used all too frequently is the I call it sort of the last refuge of unoriginal reporters, but as the man on the street. A lot of times for stories when we have nobody else is willing to talk about it, you want to get somebody's opinion, so you ask people who are more likely than not terribly informed about the subject to give a random opinion. And so sometimes, sometimes you may, not accost, but motion somebody in a car to talk about that. But I mean, you're talking about a situation where somebody doesn't want to be part of a story and people are just forcing their way in?
Yes.
Okay. Well.
Or even coming into if you're on your private property.
Right.
And the reporter wants to get a statement from you.
Right. Well, I mean, the marching orders that we get from our legal department is that you can go anywhere the general public can go until you're told to leave. So, I mean, if you don't have a no trespassing sign on your property, it's okay for me to go up and ask, and if you say, I don't want to talk and leave, then they say, okay, thank you, goodbye. I mean, your issue about, personal invasion, it's legitimate. I mean, when a person indicates they don't want to be interviewed, unless, of course, they're an axe murderer, or, I mean, the circumstances are, somewhat different, but yeah, the ordinary people, in my opinion, should not be forced to participate in stories they don't want to be in.